get started, thanks so much for hanging out with us for a little while. So, this is a big endeavor, this film. It's trilingual film. And I'm curious what each of your relationship is to language and how it was to speak and sing in different languages throughout this film.
Yes, I'm French Canadian. I was born in Quebec, raised there, went to school there, learned English growing up, studied theater out here. So my first language is French, and then, I think the hardest part for me in this movie was to switch back and forth constantly. Like, half of the first sentence is in French, and the second half is in English, and it was a bit intense. I don't have to speak 3 languages. Sean had an extra language that he had to learn and speak. For singing, it was interesting. Sean and I are 2 of the only cast who wasn't in the play.
Like of the main cast that weren't part of the stage production, we were cast. So for
the villains, they brought in the villains.
Right.
But a lot of the other actors had time to, sing the songs and learn them and be on stage for 3 years. So we kind of came in.
Yeah, and lip syncing to their voices while we're lip syncing to other voices.
Other voices.
Yeah.
With different accents, different age, like I'm a alto and that was very soprano. So it was hard. Yeah, but it was a great challenge. And I feel like I strayed from the question, but hopefully I answered.
That was great. No, I'm originally from New Brunswick. And funny you were talking about the trouble you had switching between the French and the English in New Brunswick. That is a very common thing in French Canadian as well. It's called chiac, Franglish basically, where we're just switching from one language to the other without even thinking twice. So for me, it wasn't as much of a challenge. The added challenge was the third language, the Mohawk language, which in a way I lucked out that the audition scene was that first scene where I come in and I have the 3 languages and it's a longer scene. And thank God for the internet, because there were resources where I could just get a basic understanding of how the Mohawk language, how I could read it and say it. And then finally, when we did the production, Corey and them had gone somewhere and had spoken with people who spoke Mohawk and had recordings of them saying the lines. So then I was able to take my previous knowledge and then add this new knowledge of pronunciation, learning that a spelled K is actually a G, the H sounds like an L sound, and, taking that knowledge, but being able to very quickly translate it into the film script, so it was a little bit easier. The bulk of the work was months before even the production started for the audition, for me anyway.
A lot of homework.
A lot of homework.
I didn't realize it wasn't your voices.
Yeah.
Singing.
Which is amazing, right? I think, so the original production had Andrew Cohen playing the role of Clarke, and we have a very similar tone. So a lot of people, like even friends of mine who saw the movie were like, oh, that wasn't you singing? It's like, yeah. So it worked out really well.
That's a win.
It is a win.
I've watched a lot of RuPaul, and I was like, wow, I actually have to lip sync for my life, for real this time. And when we filmed it, I don't know about you, but I was actually singing because I wanted it to look real. I wanted the breaths to look real. And there's a lot of, I can actually tell in one of the songs that I'm nervous. I'm just, shaking. And so I was singing as loud as I could, poorly, because I cannot sing like that. But I was giving it everything I had. And then we filmed a scene, and someone from the crew came and was like, wow, you are an incredible singer. And I was like, I'm not actually singing. So I was really proud, because I was like, that's the best you can do.
The soundtrack, your singer is singing in an operatic style. So
Opera and old French with like rolled R's.
Yeah,
and
different from your French accent.
Totally different accent. So
yeah,
if anyone believed that it was us singing,
yeah.
great. If not, we did our best.
And I mean, and singing on set, that was, I think everybody did that, where they actually sang to the track that was playing. Because that's the easiest way to lip sync, is to actually sing it. Thankfully,
helps.
the soundtrack was on Spotify. So leading up to the shoot, I was just listening to the song over and over and over again, where I just knew it by heart. And which made it so much easier.
Priez pour moi, Marie, pauvre pécheur, maintenant et à l'heure de notre mort. Priez pour moi, Marie, pauvre pécheur, maintenant et à l'heure de notre mort.
And it's still on Spotify too.
Yeah,
so
check it
if
out.
you're like loving the music, you can still listen to it once you are on your car ride home even. You mentioned how you're both the antagonists of this film. I'm curious what that process is like to dive into a character that's considered a villain.
For me, I mean, my character Clarke, a lot of the movie is based on survival. All these characters are trying to survive, and Clarke is trying to survive as well as an Englishman in this French colony, trading as a merchant and also trading secrets and information. And it all comes to survival. You know, he ends up with Marie-Jeanne because that's how he's going to survive the winter, is by having this woman with him as his wife. And so, you know, I wasn't approaching it per se as a villain on the inside. From the outside perspective, I can see that. But as developing the character, it's going off of the survival aspect of it and justifying his choices and what he's doing for him in that moment.
Yeah, my experience was a little bit similar. I enjoy playing villains. I think, well, it's just such a challenge. It's so different from who you are. And like you were saying, you can't approach it being like, I'm going to play a villain, because I think those characters don't think they're villains. They're just trying to do the best they can. And I think, yes, survival is a huge part, but I think they're driven by fear. My character is afraid of the unknown. She's ignorant, and she doesn't know what's outside the fort, and she just goes with what she knows, and she's just trying to survive and trying to do the best she can. So it was almost shocking to see myself, because I wasn't trying to look like I was angry. It was just my inner monologue and just trying to do what I could, but it really came across as extremely harsh. And I was watching myself being like, whoa, that's very intense. But yeah, I think those characters are human, and for the time period, they were doing what they thought was right. And yeah, again, it's like survival. And I really think something happened with her husband. I think he's dead. Yeah. So, you know, she's just really devoting herself to what her mission is and just focusing on that.
Rassembler les gamines et les putains et les envoyer ici pour se marier. Pas mal comme idée.
Ce sont des femmes honnêtes.
Ce n'est pas la place pour les femmes honnêtes, madame.
Restez près de moi.
Yeah, I really get a sense of that care for the fee, but in like a maybe not in the right way, but in the way that she knows, in order to make sure that these women survive. Yeah. And I wondered also how many she's had to bury over the years, and so I totally can see that point.
She's had to harden herself, and we don't know what's going on. The stories aren't about our characters, but we have to build a life. You know, my husband is out at sea. I don't have children. That's weird for the time. So what's that about? And I think there's a lot that we don't know, so we have to build upon that imaginary life in order to justify the actions that your character does in the moment.
Was there thought of having catastrophe at the end, or was it decided to have this powerful ending in terms of forward thinking and all that, you know, and in terms of a more positive ending after the disaster of the village? So I was just wondering if there was thoughts about that, or comments about
it. Yeah, thank you. You know, I don't know exactly Corey and Julie McIsaac's thought process, but I mean, it's great to have hope at the end of it all, and that's what we all want, is hope, and hope that, you know, things aren't great right now, but that let's keep working at this, and I hope that in the future, you know, love will prevail.
That's what I was going to say. It ends on a hopeful note. I think the cycle continues. It's about survival in the moment. The new fee arrive at the end, so start over. It's just about surviving season after season. You know, they're going to rebuild, and I think it is exactly ending on that hopeful note.
Yeah, and
Grateful for it. I have to say, I mean,
good.
it was so deeply painful in places that to have at least not everything destroyed at the end was. Yeah. I was really grateful for it.
And it's almost a false ending. I remember the first time I watched it, and I was like, this is... And then I was like, oh, it's going to keep going. Oh, great. Oh, thank God. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. So exactly. I felt the exact same way.
I'm curious, Sean, do you think that Clarke survives the stab wound?
No. Clarke dies.
He did.
He did. He's there in his house by himself. It's winter. Yeah, I mean, he's surviving a little bit longer. He's got that fur coat on. So, no, he's done for.
Does she have the empathy, like her words were what destroyed a village? So moving forward, I don't know if that's something that you, as who played the character, if you thought about that, like had impact.
I think she has empathy towards the fee, but I think she sees the Indigenous people outside the fort as a threat and as something that is disrupting what they're you know, with Louis, like she feels like she has this mission of we need to populate the new world, even though it is already populated. But she's not really accepting that because they're not religious and they don't believe in God, which was kind of everything back then. So empathy with the fee, I do think she really feels for them. And I grew up in Quebec, so I learned about les filles du roi. I knew who they were, but I'm not sure if this was my own judgment or how it was taught, but I remember thinking they were whores and prostitutes, and that I remember that being what we had learned. So for me to approach this with they're noble women, they're here to do their duty, they're, you know, the king's daughters, that had like that was their title and it was noble. So I do think she has empathy for what the women have gone through, and just surviving the boat ride was just incredible because the survival rate was really, really low. But again, it's kind of like no whining. You survive, praise God, and move on and keep going, keep moving forward.
Is the water here safe to drink?
We had vinegar as a precaution. Next.
On the ship, the water was rancid. This last week, there were girls dying every day.
You survived. Give thanks to God for your good fortune.
Yeah, I guess just adding on to that as well, I struggle a little bit with, like we have to remember, I think, as viewers, we have to remember to put ourselves in that place and time, because when we hear the women today, and then you take into account that these girls were 14 years old, you know, that today, by today's standards, they're not women, they're little girls, you know, so I think it's also, I always like to think, you know, when I'm thinking about anything that's historical, you have to put yourself in that place and time because it's different. It was different then than it is now, although they still really were little girls, but different expectations at such a young age.
Yeah, and a woman's value back then, if they didn't have a husband, they had no value. So a lot of the women that came from France were also widows. They'd lost their husbands, and all of a sudden they were nothing. And if they didn't have children and they weren't actively contributing, they were nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious. You both mentioned joining the production, not as part of the stage production cast, but and especially a story that was, you know, had been created by a group for so long, and coming into that at this stage of the process. I mean, you both did amazing and really grateful for your work, but just would be curious to hear a little bit more.
You know, personally, I didn't find it difficult to meld with the group because it was a stage production. So these are all theater actors doing the film. Being part of the theater community, there's a lot of people that I already knew. And so it was, in a way, working on a theater production in Fort Langley and with cameras in front of us. And actually my first day was rehearsals, because I played Clarke, but I was also one of the dancers in the sort of in that black box dance dream sequence. Eagle Eyes might have spotted me, but yeah, so there was that rehearsal aspect, which was very theatrical. My first day on set was in a theater, and so I personally didn't find it hard to, the group, the cast and the crew were very accepting, and we were all able to share the story together.
Yeah, I think even if we didn't know most of the actors, we knew of them, so it was very easy to just get along with everyone. Everyone was great. I think the thing I had the hardest time with, it was my biggest role that wasn't like a theater role, like in film. So usually in theater, we kind of have this arc that your character naturally goes through. But this was, you do 47 scenes and then you go from here to there. And as someone who's like the villain, I didn't want to be one note and just kind of angry all the time. So that's what was difficult. I was like, okay, where are we at? Where have I said this before? Am I mad at? Okay, so that was like really what was. I was
While
so
also
worried.
stressing that you had to sing. She came up to me. She's like, my singing scene is next. And I was so stressed about it.
Yeah, but no, everyone was great. I think I was trying to stay a little bit in my angry bubble, because if you get along too well and we start having fun backstage, it becomes difficult to. The baptism scene was really hard, and I was just trying to disassociate as much as I could, because it was hard to go through as an actor, knowing that this is all fake and that there's cameras everywhere. So I was trying to keep myself a little bit in the zone, I would say.
What is she doing here?
Marjolaine, I need to talk.
Restrain yourself.
Wait, what did I do?
Wait, where are you taking her? She cannot be in here unless she has accepted God into her heart.
No, let her go.
Will it hurt?
It won't hurt. Everything will be fine.
I just had a question about filming. You mentioned Fort Langley. I wondered where it was filmed and what was the body of water in particular.
People fish there because there was a man fishing while we were shooting, and we had to cut him out. That's all I remember. Yeah, he was fly fishing, and we're all there in our period costumes being like, okay, let's just wait till he catches a fish. I don't know. I don't know what the body of water was. But they also filmed in Quebec. The longhouse scenes were in Quebec. In a real longhouse, and so that's why it's so beautiful. We weren't there. We only filmed in Fort Langley.
Yeah.
All right, let's go with the final question back here.
Not a question, just a comment. First of all, I didn't know you guys were lip syncing.
So excellent, thank you.
And I also want to commend the young lady playing Madame Savoie, because you made me feel like I was watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with Nurse Ratched.
Yeah.
You were really
compliment.
scaring me out there.
Thank you so much.
That's an excellent comparison.
I was scary. I did it. Thank you.
Chaque année, qu'importe nos efforts, il y a toujours une fille du roi qui meurt. Chaque année, je fais tout ce que je peux, mais malgré ça, elle se retrouve aux cieux.
Thank you all for spending your afternoon with us on this beautiful day, and for sharing your thoughts with us. And thank you as well for coming in and speaking to your experience on this film.
Thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you, everyone.
For your questions.
On watun, on goyena waze, on taunk agateli andelane, on kateze zwanun ha, on yejiat agehane zagyogwa, ne zagyogwa.